table. Welcome everyone to this topic in which we are going to talk about that what exactly is the different Maven interview questions here. Now in this one we are going to talk about what are the different questions, some couple of questions we are going to go through, and we'll try to understand that what exactly the answers are. Now let's talk about the first question over here. So what exactly is in Maven here? So Maven is nothing but a kind of a popular open tool, open source build tool which is available there. Now before Maven there were a couple of build tools which was present like Ant and a lot of other legacy tools was present there. But after that, Maven is something which was released as an open source tool, and it really helps the organization to automate some couple of build processes and have some particular mechanisms like build, publish, and deploys of different projects at once itself. So it's a very powerful tool which can really help us to do the build automations. We can integrate them with the other tools like Jenkins, and we can automate them. We can schedule the builds. So a lot of various advantages we can get with the help of this tool here. It's primarily written in Java, and it can be used to build up various other kind of projects also like C#, Scala, Ruby, etc. So all these other typical tools can also be built up with the help of this tool. So this tool is primarily used to do the particular development and management of the artifacts in the Java based projects. So for most of the Java based projects nowadays, this is the default tool, and it's already integrated with the Eclipse also. So when you go for a new Maven project, automatically it will be created for a Java project. You can use it for other languages also, but yes, default choice of Java of the Java programming language is Maven build tool only. Now let's talk about the next question. So what does the Maven help with? So Maven, Apache Maven helps to manage all the processes such as build process, documentation, release process, distribution, deployment, preparing the artifacts. So all these tasks is being primarily taken care by the Apache Maven. So this tool simplifies the process of project building. It also increases the performance of the project and the overall building process. So all these things are something which is being taken care by the specific Maven tool here. So it also uses the particular, it downloads the jar files of the different dependencies. For example, if your source code is dependent on some of the Apache Web Service jar files or some of the other third-party jar files, in that case, you don't have to download those jar files and keep in some repository or keep it in some lib directory. You just have to mention that dependency in the Maven, and that jar file will be downloaded during the build process and will be cached locally. So that's the biggest advantage which we get with Maven, that you don't have to take care of all these dependencies anywhere into your source code system. So Maven provides easy access to all the required information. It helps the developer to build the projects and without even worrying about the dependencies, processes, or different environments or different, because it's an kind of tool which can be used in any platform, Linux or Windows. So they don't have to do any kind of conversions. So all they have to do is that they have to just add new dependencies, and that should be updated into the POM file, and depending on that dependencies, the source code will be built up, and they don't have to refer any kind of third-party jar files. So they don't have to play with the class paths during the build process. So no customizations is actually required with this one. Now the next question is that what are the different elements that Maven take care of? So there are different kind of elements which is being taken care by Maven. So these particular parameters are elements are builds, dependencies, reports, distribution, releases, and mailing list. So these are the typical different elements which is being taken care by the Maven during the build process and during the preparation of the builds here. So all these things you can they can explore, they can extract on that part, and they can fully understand that how they can work on all these different processes. Now next question is that what is the primary difference between the Ant and Maven? First of all, both of them are primarily used for the Java-based project. So Ant is the older version and Maven is something which was launched after the Ant here. So Ant has no formal conventions which can be coded into the build.xml file there. But yes, the Maven has conventions, so information is not required as such in the pom.xml file there. So Ant is procedural, whereas Maven is declarative over here. So Ant does not have any kind of life cycle. So it depends on you that how you program the Ant there. But Maven is having a lot of life cycles there which we can configure, we can utilize. So the ant related scripts are not reusable because you cannot reuse it, and you have to do some kind of customizations in order to work on that. But yes, Maven is not having much of the project related any kind of dependencies. They can be easily reusable there because there is nothing about the pom.xml file. It's just the artifact name and the dependencies, which is something we can override or we can change, and then the same pom.xml file we can reuse as such for the new project also. So that is where the reusability comes into the picture. Now Ant is a very specific build tool, so we don't have to, there is no plugins as such which is available there. You just have to code everything that what build process you want to prepare. Whereas in case of Maven, we have the concept of plugins, which can really help us to understand that how we can make or use of these plugins so that we can have the reusability implemented. So these are some of the differences which is available there between the Ant and Maven here. Now next thing is that what exactly is in POM file all about. So POM file is nothing but it's kind of a XML file which is available there, and it's having all the information regarding the project and the configuration details. So it primarily used over here that how the configuration needs to be done and how the setup should be performed as such here. So pom.xml file is the build script which we prepare. You can prepare it using a particular component, or you can have a particular mechanisms, or if you feel that you want to have some kind of setup. So all these things typically can be implemented, can be done with the help of build tools. So build tools can be really helpful for us to do the automations, and it can really help us to understand that how some build processes we can automate with simply with the help of pom.xml file here. So the developers usually put up everything inside these dependencies in the pom.xml file here. So this is the file which is usually present in the home directory, it's in the current directory, so that once the build is triggered, it will be picked up from that directory, and according to the steps, according to the content of the pom.xml file, the build will be processed or will be created here. Now what all included into the POM file here? So the different components which is included into the pom.xml file here is the dependencies, developers and contributors, plugins, plugin configuration, and resources. So these are the typical components which is a part of a pom.xml file, which can be same for a lot of projects. You can do some customization, and then the same POM file can be reused for the other projects also. Now what are the minimum requirement of the elements which is there for a pom.xml file, so without which the pom.xml file will not be validated and will be getting a kind of validation errors. So the minimum required elements are project root, model version, so it should be 4.0.0, the group ID of the project, the artifact ID of the project, and the version of the artifact. These are the minimum things which we want to define so that we can understand that what kind of artifact we are trying to prepare or we are trying to create here. So these are the minimum required elements which is required in the pom.xml file, without which the validation of the POM file will fail and the build will also fail here. Now what exactly is the meant with the term called build tool? So build tool is an essential tool, is a kind of a process for building or compiling the source code here. So it's needed or it's required for the below generated processes. If you want to generate the source code, if you want to compile the source code, you want to generate the source code, you want to generate some documentation from the source code, you want to compile the source code, or you want to package the source code, whether it's a jar file, it's a war file, or it's a ER file. So whatever the packaging mode you want to select, you will be able to do it with the help of the particular build tool here. And if you feel that you want to upload these particular artifacts to the artifact tree, whether it's on remote machine or locally there, so that also you can do it with the help of this particular build tools here. So build tools can be helpful in doing a lot of activities for the developers. Now what are the different steps which is involved to install Maven on Windows? Now all you have to do is that you have to just first of all download the tar file from the Maven Apache Maven repository there. Once that is done, so what happens that you have to set up some couple of environment variables. Now if you download the Java JDK using the exe file, in that case the java_home will be configured automatically. But if it is not available and you're not able to run the Java command line, in that case you have to set up the java_home. And then similarly for Maven, you have to go for the Maven_home. That particular variable you have to configure. Now once that is done, all you have to do is that you have to edit the path variable. So the bin directory of the Maven extracted folder, you have to put it up into the path variable. And once that is done, what will happen that you will be able to check the latest version, the version of the Maven over there. If it is like some old version, again you have to extract the latest version and do the steps all together again. So these are some of the ways that in which you can actually go for the installation or the configurations of Maven on the Windows platform. Now, what are the different steps which is involved for the installation of Maven on Ubuntu? So Ubuntu, it's fine. You just download the package of Java JDK there. Once the JDK is installed over there, what you can do, you can simply go ahead and say that, yes, I want to search for a particular Maven package which is available there. So once the JDK is installed, all you have to do is that you have to configure the java_home, m3_home, maven_home, and the path variable. Once all the path variables are something which is configured, then you will be able to check the latest version, like whether it's the version is correct, or we are getting the standard version over here or not over here. So that's the main mechanism that how we will be able to configure the Maven on Ubuntu here. Now, what exactly is the command to install the jar into the local repository? Now, sometimes what happens that we are not able to fetch, like some dependency is not present on the particular central repository, Maven repository, or your Artifactory repository. In that case, you have some third-party jar which we want to install locally onto your repository. So in that case, we can go for the but we can download the jar file there, and then we can run the command called mvn install-file, and then we are giving the path like -d file, where the path of the file should be provided. Now once that is done, so what will happen that in the local .m2 directory, the specific artifact will be downloaded and will be installed there. So this is a mechanism where you will be able to configure, or you will be able to set up the artifacts locally, the jar file locally here in the local repository. So next question is that how do you know that the version of the Maven being used here? So the version of the Maven is pretty easy to calculate. So all you have to do is that you have to just go for mvn and space -- version. The moment you do that, it will let you know that what JDK or what Java version you are using, and it will also show you that what particular Maven version you're going to use here. So all that details you will be able to get with that particular command here. Now, what exactly is the clean, default, and site-in variable here? So these are the build cycles which is available there within Maven. So these are the built-in build cycles. So for clean, what happens that this life cycle will help you to perform the project cleaning. So usually during the build, there are some files which is created into the target directory. So the clean life cycle is essentially helping us to clean up all that directory, all that particular target directory. And when we talk about the specific default, so default life cycle handles the project deployment. That is the default life cycle, and site is something which is helpful for creating the site documentation. It's kind of a life cycle which is available there. So clean, default, and site are the different life cycles which can perform different kind of attributes or different tasks here. Next question, what exactly is a Maven repository? So Maven repository refers to the directories of the package jar files that contain metadata. Now the metadata refers to the POM files relevant to each project. So here you can able to get your artifacts stored there. You can download these artifacts also during the Maven build. If you put up that dependency, there are different kind of repositories which is available there. One is the local repository, one is the remote repository, and one is the central repository. So these are the different typical type of repositories which we have, where we can store the artifacts also, and from where we can download the artifacts also whenever required. Now the first one is the local repository. So local repository refers to the machine of the developers itself, where all the project related files are stored there. Now whenever we work on the particular Maven, so there is in the home directory .m2 folder is created. Now usually whatever the artifacts downloaded from Artifactory or from the Maven repository, it gets cached locally there, and once it is downloaded, next time it will not download the same artifacts or the same dependency altogether again. So this local repository is something which is available locally on the developer's machine only. So it contains all the dependent jars which a particular developer is downloading during the Maven build. Now remote repositories refers to the repository which is present on the server, and from where we will be downloading the particular dependencies. So when we are running the Maven build on a fresh machine, so usually over there the local repository does not exist. So in that case, what happens that the .m2 directory is empty. But the moment you run the build, what will happen that the artifacts or the dependencies will be downloaded from the remote repository, and once it is done, once it's downloaded, it will be added or it will be downloaded cached locally there, and it will be helpful in the future run. So that will be considered as a local repository because all the artifacts, all the dependencies are downloaded there. And central repository is something which is known as the Maven community, where all the artifacts is available there. So usually we cache or we mirror these central repositories as our particular remote repositories, because it could be a possibility that these remote repositories are something which we are hosting into our organization, and central repository is something which is available centrally for everyone to use it. So these are something some kind of repositories where each and every artifacts will be stored, and anyone will be able to have the access to these particular artifacts here. So these artifacts are every open source artifacts is something which is available over there to these central repository. Now how does the Maven architecture really work here? So the Maven architecture really works in the 3 steps. The very first step is that it reads the pom.xml file here. That's the very first step. Second, it downloads the dependencies defined in the pom.xml file into the local repository from the central or the remote repository here. Once that is done, so it will create or generate the reports according to the life cycles which you have configured, whether it's a clean, install, cite, deploy, package, or whatever the life cycle you want to trigger. You will be triggering that particular life cycle, and corresponding to that the build or a specific task will be performed. So these are the 3 steps in which the overall build or any kind of execution of pom.xml file really happens here. Now what exactly is the Maven build lifecycle? So Maven lifecycle isn't nothing but collection of steps here that needs to be followed for doing a proper build of a project here. So there are primarily 3 built-in cycles which is available there. Default, which handles the project deployment, clean, which handles the project cleaning there, and cite, which handles the creation of the project sites documentation. So these are the 3 primary built-in build cycles, life cycles, which is available as such. Now, so build lifecycle has different kind of phases or the stages here, because in the previous particular slide we were talking about what are the different particular build life cycles which is available there, but these are the different phases, like what are the different step-by-step executions, like further deep down, which is available there inside a specific Maven build lifecycle. So here you can see that it's compile, then the test compile, test execution is there, then package, integration test, verify, install, and the lastly deploy here. So these are the different build phases which is available as such over here. So what exactly is the command to use to do a particular Maven site? So mvn site is something which is used to create a Maven site here. Now usually whatever the artifacts is prepared, that will be prepared in the target directory. So here also you will be able to see a site directory which is available there in the target directory, which you can refer for the site documentations. What is the different conventions used while naming a project in Maven? So usually it involves 3 components. So the full name of a project in Maven includes first of all the group ID. For example, com.apache, com.example. So these are some of the particular way that where you can provide the group ID. Artifact ID can be exact project name like Maven project or whatever the project you are creating. So sample project, example project. So these kind of things will be there in the artifact ID. And lastly is the version, like which version of your artifact you want to prepare, like 1.0.0 snapshot, 2.0.0. So like this information you are providing, that what particular version you are trying to configure here. Now let's move on to the intermediate level, where we will be having a little bit more complex questions related to the Maven here. Now what exactly is a Maven artifact? Now usually what happens that when we do a build process, as an end of result of the build process, we will get some artifacts. For example, when we build a .NET project, so there we will be able to have a exe or DLL files as an artifacts. Similarly, in case of Maven, when we do a build process, there we get the different kind of artifacts, like depending on the packaging mode, like jar file, var files, or the ER files here. So these are something which is getting generated during the build process, during the Maven process, and you can store them into your local repository, or you want to push them to the remote repository. It's something that totally depends on you. So Maven is a tool which can help you to create all the artifacts, whether it's a jar file, whether it's a var files, or whether it's a ER file here. And every artifact is having three attributes. The first one is the group ID, the artifact ID, and a particular version. And that's how you will be able to identify a full-fledged artifact as such in Maven. So Maven is not about only the name of the jar file. It's actually referring to the attributes like group ID, the artifact ID, and the version of the artifact here. Now, what are the different phases of the clean lifecycle here? So clean is something which is being used to clean the target directory so that a fresh build can be triggered there. So there are three steps: pre-clean, clean, and post-clean here. So if you wish that you want to override the particular lifecycle configurations and you want to run some particular steps before the clean activity, so you can do it into the pre-clean, and if you want to do it like some steps after clean, then post-clean can be utilized. Now, what are the different phases of the site lifecycle? So pre-site, site, post-site, and site deploy. So these are the different phases which is available there in the site lifecycle. What is exactly we meant by the Maven plugin? Now, this is the huge difference between the Ant and Maven here, because in Ant we were not having that much support of the plugins, and that's the reason why we had to deal with all the build configurations. So we have to simply put the overall build process, that how the build should be triggered, but that is not something which is there in case of Maven. In Maven we have a lot of flexibility because we can actually put up what exactly build configurations we want to put here. We can put some features like important features over here in Maven, and these plugins we can utilize. For example, I want to perform a compilation. Now, I don't really want to do any kind of configurations in this one. So what I can do is that I can simply use the compilation plugin in Maven, and that can really help me because I don't have to unnecessarily write or rewrite the configuration that how the compilation should be done. It's something which is pre-configured or pre-written in these plugins, that I can simply import the plugin and I can do the build process or the compilation process in a pretty standard mode. So I don't really have to do any kind of workarounds with that, and simply with a small automations I will be able to reach that how these Maven plugins can be integrated into my pom.xml file, and I can desire or I can have some particular procedures and some steps executed there. So that's the biggest benefit which we really get with the help of Maven plugins. Now, why exactly the Maven plugins are utilized? So to create a jar files, to create the var files, to compile the code files, to perform the unit testing, to create the project documentation, and to create the project reports. So there are a variety of things in which we can actually use these Maven plugins through the integrations within the pom.xml file there. So it's all about the plugins. You just import the plugin and that desired activity will be performed there. Now, what are the different type of plugins which is there? So you can have either a build projects. For performing the build activities, you can have some build plugins. For reporting plugins also there, which can be only generated or utilized to generate the reports, to process the reports, and do any kind of formatting or any kind of processing on the reports here. So that is where the reporting plugins are utilized. Now, what is exactly the difference between the convention and the configuration in Maven? So convention is in particular process when the developers are not required to create the build processes. So configuration is when the developers are supposed to create the build processes. So the users do not have to rectify the configuration in detail, and once the project is created, it will automatically create a structure. So they must specify every in case of configuration you have to provide each and every details. So that's how the configurations really happens, because you have to put every detail into the pom.xml file, and that's how the particular configurations really work as such. So this is the huge difference between the conventions and the configurations here. Now, so why exactly is said that Maven uses conventions over the configurations? Maven pretty much does not put any efforts like on the particular developers that they have to put each and every configuration. So there are some ready-made plugins which is available there, and pretty much we are making use of that so that in such a case we don't have to worry about the executions, and we will be able to pretty much work on that. So conventions, like Maven uses the conventions instead of the configurations, so the developers they don't just have to create the Maven project, the rest of the particular structure will be taken care automatically. So they are not expecting that the developers should be doing the configuration work, and everything should be taken care in such a way that you just have to start the things and rest of the things should be taken care by the Maven itself. So Maven will be responsible, because due to the plugins, it will be responsible to set up the default architecture, the default folder structures, and all you have to do is that you have to just place the source code in the desired folder structure here. So that's something which you need to do as a particular developers. So what exactly is the Maven order of inheritance here? So the order of inheritance is the settings, CLI parameters, parent POM, and the project POM, which means that if you have some configuration and settings, that will be the highest value, then the CLI parameters are there, then the parent POM is there, and then the project POM. So this is the way that how the particular parameters or the configurations will be picked up by the Maven. So that's the order. So what does the build life cycles and the phases imply in the basic concept of Maven? So build life cycles consist of a sequence of build phases, and each build phase consists of a sequence of goals. When a phase is run, all the goals related to that phase and its plugins are also compiled. So you will be able to have a lot of particular goals which is residing inside a phase there. And similarly, lifecycle is nothing but a kind of a sequence of the different phase. So lifecycle comes in the top, then it comes on the phases, and then it comes on the goals here. Now, what is the terminology called goal in case of Maven? The term terminology goal refers to the specific task that makes it possible for the project to be built and organized. So it's something which we can run. So it's the actual implementation which is going on there. For example, in the build process, in the build phase, I have a different goals like clean, install, package, deploy. These are the different typical goals which is available there, which I can execute into the Maven here. So these are the different goals like which we can execute and which we can run during a Maven build. Next question is, what is exactly meant by the term dependencies and the repositories in Maven here? So dependencies refer to the Java libraries which we usually put up into the pound.xml file there. Now what happens that sometimes our source code is requiring some jar files like a secondary jar files for performing the build process. So instead of downloading it and storing it into the class path for during the build process, we just have to specify the dependency of that artifact, what dependency we need to put, and once that dependency is put up there, we will be able to have that jar file downloaded and cached into the local repository during the Maven build project. Now, if the dependencies are not present in your local repository, then Maven will try to download it from the central repository. And again, if it is not it's something which is available, which is downloaded from the central repository, then it will be cached locally into the local repository. So that's the cycle which is being implemented and utilized during this process. Now, what exactly is a snapshot in Maven? So snapshot refers to the version already available in the Maven report repository. It signifies the latest development copy. That's what we do with the case of snapshot here. So Maven checks for a new version of snapshot in the remote repository for every new build. So during the build process, like a new snapshot version is being downloaded, and the snapshot is updated by the data service team, which with updated source code every time to the repository for each Maven build. So snapshot is something which we will be using like very frequently. We will be updating to that, and frequently we will be updating the version to that, and we will try to explore and we'll try to do the modifications. Now, what are the different type of projects available in Maven? So there are thousands of Java projects which can be utilized or can be implemented by Maven here. So this helps the as the user that they no longer have to remember every configurations to set up a particular project. For example, Spring Boot, Spring MVC, Spring Boot, etc. These are the different projects which is already available in Maven. So most of the we have already discussed that for the Java-based projects, Maven is something which is considered as by default. So a lot of organizations are actually using it for storing or utilizing it for the particular Maven project. Now, what exactly is the Maven archetype over here? So Maven archetype refers to a Maven plugin that is entitled to create a project structure as per its template. These archetypes are just project templates that are generated by Maven when any new project is created there. So this is something which we are using so that we will be able to create a fresh new projects. right? So let's go on to the advanced level of this Maven Quotients. Now, what exactly is the command to create a new project based on an archive type? So MVN archetype generate is used to create a new Java project based on the archetype. Now this will take up some parameters from as an end user from you, and depending on that parameters, it will create the pom.xml file, it will create the source directories, inside that main, Java, test, all these different couple of directory structures will be automatically created. Now why we require this command? So that if you are going to create a project from scratch from the day one, this command will help you to have all the folder structures created, and then further on you can put up your source code and those files as such in this folder structure. So that's how is the mechanism that where we will be able to see that how the setup can be performed really over here. Now what does Maven Clean implies? Now Maven Clean is a plugin that suggests that it's going to clean the files and directories there. So whenever we do a build process, usually in the target directory we have some class files, some jar files, or whatever the generated source code which is available, that will be present in the target directory. So the Maven Clean is something which is available, which is going to clean all these directories. And why we are doing this directory structure cleanup? So that we will be able to do a fresh build process, and there should not be any kind of issues as such over here. So that's the main reason why we are looking forward for this particular mechanism, or for this particular changes as such here. Now, so what exactly is a build profile all about? So build profiles refers to the set of configurations where we can have like typically two different kind of build processes there. So if you feel that the same pom.xml file you can you want to run for different particular configurations, so that you will be able to do pretty much with the help of this component. So build profile is used to do a customization processes, so that you will be able to have the process, and you will be able to perform the configurations and the setups all together there. So that's a very important aspect to be considered, that which we need to discuss when we talk about the build profile. So build profile, whenever you feel that you want to do some customizations and you want to proceed with the setup, so that's where it's utilized. Next thing is that what are different type of build profiles which is available there. So the build profiles can be done on for a particular project, like per project you can do. You can even do the build profiles in the settings.xml file also, and if you feel that you want to do it into the global settings.xml file, so that also you can do as such over here. So there are different ways in which you can do the customization, and once the customization is done, you will be able to have the different ways of doing the setups and the configurations over there. So what exactly is meant by the particular system dependencies here? So let's talk about that also. So system dependencies refers to the particular mechanisms where we feel that how the dependencies should be present there. So that is something which is having a scope of system there. So these dependencies are commonly used to help Maven know the dependencies that is being provided by the JDK. System dependencies are mostly used to resolve the dependencies on the artifacts that are provided by the JDK. So these dependencies are somewhat which is being utilized and used over here, so that we will be able to implement and go ahead through the system dependencies. What is the reason for using an optional dependency here? So optional dependencies are used to decrease the transitive burden of some libraries. So what happens that when you download an artifact, when you put up a dependency, so it could be a possibility that some dependencies as in particular optional can also be downloaded. Now these are not always required, but yes, sometimes what happens that these are downloaded so that you don't have to put each and every artifact or dependency into the pom.xml file. For example, you're trying to download some Apache tool, and with that some like 3-4 jar files or 3-4 another dependencies are also getting downloaded. Now if you are using that dependencies, that totally great, because you don't have to put that list or that entry in the dependency list in the pom.xml file, and that can really save your time. But if you feel that you don't want to have them, and these are the optional ones, and you really want to get rid of that, so that also you can exclude while downloading any kind of dependency. So these are the optional ones which, depending on your requirement, you can utilize, you can process, and if you feel that you don't want to get it, you won't want to process it, you can simply ignore it and you can get rid of that also. Now, what is a dependency scope and how many type of dependency scope are there? So there are different type of dependency scopes which is there, which is used on each and every stage of the build here. So compile, provided, runtime, test, system, import. These are the different kind of dependency scopes which we have, using which we can define that when exactly we want to go ahead for a specific build process. So depending on your requirement, you can explore all these build scopes and you can get benefits out of that. What is exactly a transitive dependency in Maven? So Maven avoids the need to find out and specify libraries that our own dependencies require by including the transitive dependencies automatically. So transitive dependencies says that if X depends on Y and Y depends on Z, then X depends on Y and both there. So which means that you are not dependent on one artifact, you also need the Z artifact there with the Y artifact. So that is what you need to do, so that you will get both the dependencies there, because this is normal that if you are trying to download some particular artifacts or download some dependency, and that dependency is also dependent on some other artifact or some other jar file, then you have to include both of them. So this is something which you will be able to get, so that you can easily download all these dependent jar files also, and the Maven build can be success. How can a Maven build profile can be activated? So Maven build profile can be activated through different ways. So explicitly using the command line, you can talk about that which profile you want to execute. Through Maven settings, you can do based on environment parameters, OS settings, and present and missing files. So these are the different ways in which you can actually activate that which particular profile you want to have. So profiles configurations can also be saved in various situations and various files, and from there you will be able to refer that which file you want to refer as such. Now, what is meant by the dependency exclusion? The exclusion is used to exclude any transitive dependency, because you never know that if you are trying to put up a dependency entry in the POM.xml file, that artifact is also further dependent on another artifact. So in order to see that you want to exclude that dependent artifact which is being automatically downloaded, that also we can exclude with the help of exclusion. So you can avoid the transitive dependency with the help of dependency exclusions here. So what exactly is in Mojo? So Mojo is nothing but Maven plain old Java object here. So it's an executable goal in Maven, and a plugin refer to the distribution of such Mojos. So Mojos enable the Maven to extend its functionality that already is not found in it. So it's kind of an extension which is there, and using this we can get some additional benefits and some executions over there. So what is the command to create a new project based on a hard drive? So again, archetype is something which we normally use to create the new projects. Now you can give the parameters in the command itself, or you want it to in kind of an interactive mode where it will take the parameters from the end user, and according to that the project will be created onto hard drive or onto server, wherever you wish you want to create, you can create a new project. So explain about the Maven settings.xml file. So Maven settings.xml file contains the elements that are used to define that how the Maven execution should be there. So there are different settings like local, remote, central, all these different repositories are configured as such over here. Now in this case, what happens that usually the configurations are done in such a way that it can go for the executions, it can go for the build process, and the complete executions can be involved and can be achieved as such here. So all these executions are something which we can really perform, and here we can put some credentials, how to connect to the remote repository, how to connect to remote repository. All that stuff is something which we talk about over here. What exactly is meant by term super POM here? So super POM refers to the default POM of Maven. So the POMs of Maven can derive from, so it's nothing but a reference to a parent POM which is available there, that is a super POM. So if you define some dependencies in that super POM, automatically the child POM will also be able to inherit all those dependencies. So we can put some executions, like we can put some configuration in the super POM, so that if multiple projects are going to refer that, they should be able to refer that easily. So that's the reason why we primarily use the super POM, so that we can have the execution, some processes put up over there, and all the other projects should be able to refer or inherit from there. So where exactly the dependencies are stored? So dependencies are stored like in different locations, like you have the local repository, remote repository is there. Local repository is on the local developer's machine, and remote repository is something which is available on a server in form of Artifactory. Now let's talk about the Gradle installation, because this is a very important aspect to be done, because when we are doing the installation we have to download the Gradle executables, right? So let's see that what are the different steps is involved in the process of the Gradle installation. So when we talk about the Gradle installation, so there are primarily 4 steps which is available. The very first one is that you have to check if the Java is installed. Now if the Java is not installed, so you can go to the OpenJDK or you can go for the Oracle Java, so you can do the installation of the JDK on your system. So JDK 8 is something you can most commonly use nowadays, so you can install that. Once the Java is downloaded and installed, then you have to do the Gradle download Gradle there. Now once the Gradle binaries are executable or the zip file gets downloaded, so you can add the environment variables, and then you can validate if the Gradle installation is working fine as expected or not. So we will be doing the Gradle installation into our local systems and into the Windows platform, and we'll see that how exactly we can go for the installation of Gradle, and we'll see that what are the different versions we are going to install here. So let's go back to the system and see that how we can go for the Gradle installation. So this is the website of the JDK of Java, Oracle Java. Now here you have different JDK, so from there you can do whatever the option you want to select, you can go with that. So JDK 8 is something which is most commonly used nowadays, like it's most comfortable or compatible version which is available. So in case you want to see that if the JDK is installed into your system, all you have to do is that you have to just say like Java hyphen version, and that will give you the output that whether the Java is installed into your system or not. So in case my system the Java is installed, but if you really want to do the installation, you have to download the JDK installer from this website, from this Oracle website, and then you can proceed further on that part. Now once the JDK is installed, so you have to go for the Gradle installation, because Gradle is something which will be performing the build automations and all that stuff. So you have to download the binaries like the zip file probably in which we have the executables and all, and then we have to have some particular environment variables configured so that we will be able to have the system modified over there. So right now we have got like the prerequisites as in Java version installed. Now the next thing is that we have to install or download the executables. So in order to download the latest Gradle distribution, so you have to click on this one, right? Now over here there are different options, like you want to go for 6.7. now it's they having like binary onlys or complete. We'll go for the binary onlys because we don't want to have the source, we just want the binaries and the executables. Now it's getting downloaded, it's around close to 100 MB of the installer which is there. Now we have to just extract into a directory, and then the same path we need to configure into the environment variable, so that in that way we will be able to see that how the Gradle executables will be running, and it will give the complete output to us over here in this case. So it may take some time, and once the particular modifications and the download is done, then we have to extract it, and once the extraction is done, so we will be able to go back and have some particular version or have the configurations established over there. So that let's just wait for some time, and then we will be continuing with the environment variables like this one. So once the installation and the extraction is done, now we just have to go to the downloads where this one is downloaded. We have to extract it. Now extraction is required so that we can have the setup, like we can set up this path into our environment variables, and once the path is configured and established, we will be able to start further on that part and on the execution. So meanwhile these files are getting extracted. Let's see. So we already got the folder structure over here, and we will see like we will give this path here. There is 2 environment variables we have to configure. One is the Gradle underscore home, and one is the in the path variable. So we'll copy this path here. So meanwhile this is getting extracted, we can save our time and we can go to the environment variable. So we can right click on this one, properties. In there we have to go for the advanced systems settings, then environment variables. Now here we have to give it like Gradle underscore home. Now in this one we will not be giving it till the bin directory, so that only needs to be there where the Gradle is extracted. So we'll say okay, and then we have to go for the path variable where we will be adding up a new entry. In this one we will be putting up till the bin directory here, because the Gradle executable should be there when I'm running the Gradle command. So these 2 variables I have to configure, then okay. and OK. So this one is done. So now you have to just open the command prompt and see that whether the execution or the commands which you're running is completely successful or not. So meanwhile it's extracting all the executables and all those things. It will help us to understand that how the whole build process or how the build tools can be integrated over there. Now once the extraction is done, so you have to run like cmd java version to check the version of the java, and then the Gradle underscore version is what you're going to see. Check the version of the Gradle which is installed, and now you can see that it says that 6.7 version is being installed over here in this case. So that's the way that how we are going to have the Gradle installation performed into our particular system. And in this one we will be also working on some demos and some hands-on to understand that how we can make use of Gradle for performing the build activity. So let's begin with the first understanding that what exactly is in Gradle all about. Now Gradle is a kind of a build tool which can be used for the build automation performance, and it can be used for various programming languages. Primarily it's being used for the Java based applications. It's a kind of build tool which can help you to see that how exactly automatically you can prepare the builds, you can perform the automations. Earlier we used to do the build activity from the Eclipse, and we used to do it manually, right? But with the help of this build tool we are going to do it like automatically without any manual efforts as such. Here there are like a lot of activities which we will be doing during the build process. Primarily there are different activities like compilations, linkage, packaging. These are the different tasks which we perform during the build process, so that we can understand that how the build can be done and we can perform the automations. This process also it's kind of standardized, because again if you want to automate something, standards or a standard process is something which we require for that before being going ahead with that part. So that's the reason why we are getting this build tool, because this build tool helps us to do a standardization process to see that how the standards can be met and how we can proceed further with that part. Also, it's something which can be used for a variety of languages, programming languages. Java is the primary language for which we use the Gradle, but again other languages like Scala, Android, C, C++, Groovy, these are some of the languages for which we can use the same tool. Now it's actually using like it's referring to as an Groovy based domain specific language rather than XML, because Ant and Maven, these are the XML based build tools, but this one is not that dependent on XML. It's using the Groovy based domain specific language. DSL language is being used here. Right now again it's something which can be used to do the build. It can further on be used to perform the test cases automations also there, and then further on you can deploy to the Artifactory also that okay I want to push the artifacts to the Artifactory, so that part also you can get it done over here. So primarily this tool is known for doing the build automations for the big and large projects, the projects in which the source code, the amount of source code and the efforts is more. So in that case this particular tool makes sense. Now Gradle includes both the pros of Maven and Ant, but it removes the drawbacks or whatever the issues which we face during these two build tools. So it's helping us to remove all the cons which we face during the implementation of Ant and Maven, and again all the pros of Ant and Maven is implemented with this Gradle tool. Now let's see that why exactly this Gradle is used, because that's a very valid question, that what is the activity, like what is the reason why we use the Gradle. Because the first one is that it resolves issues faced on other build tools. That's a primary reason, because we are already having the tools like Maven and Ant which is available there, but primarily this Gradle tool is something which is removing all the issues which we are facing with the implementation of other tools. So these issues are getting removed as such. Second one is that it focuses on maintainability, performance and flexibility. So it's giving the focus on that how exactly we can manage the big large projects, and we can have flexibility that what different kind of projects I want to build. Today I want to build in different ways, tomorrow the source code modifies, gets added up, so I have the flexibility that I can change this build scripts, I can perform the automations. So a lot of flexibility is available which is being supported by this tool. And then the last one is like it provides a lot of features, a lot of plugins. Now this is one of the benefit which we get in the case of Maven also, that we get a lot of features. But again, when we talk about Gradle, then it provides a lot of plugins. Like let's say that normally in a build process we do the compilation of the source code, but sometimes let's say that we want to build an Angular or a Node.js application. Now in that case we may be involved in running some command line executions, some command line commands, just to make sure that yes, we are running the commands and we are getting the output. So there are a lot of features which we can use, like there are a lot of plugins which is available there, and we will be using those plugins in order to go ahead and in order to execute those builds process and doing the automations. Now let's talk about the Gradle and Maven, because again, when we talk about Maven, like it was like something which was primarily used for the Java, but again when we are talking about Gradle, so again it's just being used primarily for the Java here. But what is the reason that we prefer Gradle over the Maven? So what are the different reason for that? Let's talk about that part, because this is very important. We need to understand that what is the reason that Gradle is preferred as a better tool for the Java as compared to Maven when we talk about for the build automation here. Now the first one is that the Gradle using the Groovy DSL language, domain specific language, whereas the Maven is considered as a project management tool which is creating the POMs or XML format files. So it's being used for the Java project, but XML format is being used here. And on the other hand, Gradle is something which is not using the XML formats, and whatever the build scripts you are creating, that is something which is there in the Groovy based DSL language. And on the other hand, in the POM we have to create the XMLs, dependencies, whatever the attributes you are putting up in the Maven, that's something which is available there in the format of XML. The overall goal of the Gradle is to add functionality to a project, whereas the goal of the Maven is to to complete a project phase, like to work on different project phase, like compilation, test executions, then packaging, so then deploying to Artifactory. So these are all different phases which is available there into the Maven. But on the other hand, Gradle is all about adding the functionality, that how you want to have some particular features added up into the build scripts. In Gradle, there are, like, we usually specify that what are the different tasks we want to manage. So different tasks we can add up into the case of Gradle, and we can override those tasks also. In case of Maven, it's all about the different phases which is being happening over here, and it's in sequence manner. So these phases happens in the sequence order, that how exactly you can build up the sequence there. But in case of Gradle, you can have your own tasks, custom tasks also, and you can disrupt the sequence, and you can see that how the different steps can be executed in a different order. So Maven is something which is a phase mechanism there, but Gradle is something which is according to the features or the flexibilities. Now Gradle works on the tasks, whatever the task you want to perform, it works directly on those tasks there. On the other hand, Maven is something does not have any kind of inbuilt cache, so every time you are running the build, so separate things or the plugins and all this information gets loaded up, which takes definitely a lot of time. On the other hand, Gradle is something which is using its own internal cache, so that it can make the builds a little bit faster, because it's not something which is doing the things from the scratch. Whatever the things is already being available in the cache, so it's just pick that part, and from there it will proceed further on the build automation. And that's the reason why Gradle performance is much faster as compared to Maven, because it uses some kind of a cache in there, and then helps to improve the overall performance. Now let's talk about the Gradle installation, because this is a very important aspect to be done, because when we are doing the installation, we have to download the Gradle executables, right? So let's see that what are the different steps is involved in the process of the Gradle installation. So when we talk about the Gradle installation, so there are primarily 4 steps which is available. The very first one is that you have to check if the Java is installed. Now if the Java is not installed, so you can go to the OpenJDK or you can go for the Oracle Java, so you can do the installation of the JDK on your system. So JDK 8 is something you can most commonly use nowadays, so you can install that. Once the Java is downloaded and installed, then you have to do the Gradle download Gradle there. Now once the Gradle binaries are executable or the zip file gets downloaded, so you can add the environment variables, and then you can validate if the Gradle installation is working fine as expected or not. So we will be doing the Gradle installation into our local systems and into the Windows platform, and we'll see that how exactly we can go for the installation of Gradle, and we'll see that what are the different versions we are going to install here. So let's go back to the system and see that how we can go for the Gradle installation. So this is the website of the JDK of Java, Oracle Java. Now here you have different JDK, so from there you can do whatever the option you want to select, you can go with that. So JDK 8 is something which is most commonly used nowadays, like it's most comfortable or compatible version which is available. So in case you want to see that if the JDK is installed into your system, all you have to do is that you have to just say like Java -version, and that will give you the output that whether the Java is installed into your system or not. So in case my system the Java is installed, but if you really want to do the installation, you have to download the JDK installer from this website, from this Oracle website, and then you can proceed further on that part. Now once the JDK is installed, so you have to go for the Gradle installation, because Gradle is something which will be performing the build automations and all that stuff. So you have to download the binaries, like the zip file probably, in which we have the executables and all, and then we have to have some particular environment variables configured so that we will be able to have the system modified over there. So right now we have got like the prerequisites as in Java version installed. Now the next thing is that we have to install or download the executables. So in order to download the latest Gradle distribution, so you have to click on this one. Right now over here there are different options, like you want to go for 6.7. now they having like binary onlys or complete. We'll go for the binary onlys because we don't want to have the source, we just want the binaries and the executables. Now it's getting downloaded, it's around close to 100 MB of the installer which is there. Now we have to just extract into a directory, and then the same path we need to configure into the environment variable, so that in that way we will be able to see that how the Gradle executables will be running, and it will give the complete output to us over here in this case. So it may take some time, and once the particular modifications and the download is done, then we have to extract it, and once the extraction is done, so we will be able to go back and have some particular version or have the configurations established over there. So let's just wait for some time, and then we will be continuing with the environment variables like this one. So once the installation and the extraction is done, now we just have to go to the downloads where this one is downloaded. We have to extract it. Now extraction is required so that we can have the setup, like we can set up this path into our environment variables, and once the path is configured and established, we will be able to start further on that part and on the execution. So meanwhile these files are getting extracted. Let's see. So we already got the folder structure over here, and we will see that we will give this path here. There is two environment variables we have to configure. One is the Gradle_home and one is the in the path variable. So we'll copy this path here. So meanwhile this is getting extracted, we can save our time and we can go to the environment variable. So we can right click on this one, properties. In there we have to go for the advanced systems settings, then environment variables. Now here we have to give it like Gradle_home. Now in this one we will not be giving it till the bin directory, so that only needs to be there where the Gradle is extracted. So we'll say okay, and then we have to go for the path variable where we will be adding up a new entry. In this one we will be putting up till the bin directory here, because the Gradle executable should be there when I'm running the Gradle command. So these two variables I have to configure, then okay, and okay. So this one is done. So now you have to just open the command prompt and see that whether the execution or the commands which you're running is completely successful or not. So meanwhile it's extracting all the executables and all those things. It will help us to understand that how the whole build process or how the build tools can be integrated over there. Now once the extraction is done, so you have to run like cmd Java -version to check the version of the Java, and then the Gradle_version is what you're going to see. Check the version of the Gradle which is installed, and now you can see that it says that 6.7 version is being installed over here in this case. So that's the way that how we are going to have the Gradle installation performed into our particular system. So let's go back to the content. Let's talk about the Gradle core concepts here. Now in this one we are going to talk about what are the different core concepts of Gradle are all about. The very first one is the projects here. Now a project represents an item to be performed over here, to be done, like deploying an application to a staging environment, performing some build. So Gradle is something which is required the projects. The Gradle project which you prepare is not having multiple tasks which is available there, which is configured, and all these tasks, all these different tasks needs to be executed into a sequence. Now sequence is again is a very important part, because again if the sequence is not meant properly, then the execution will not be done in a proper order. So that's the very important aspect here. Tasks is the one in which is a kind of an entity in which we will be performing a series of steps. These tasks may be like compilation of a source code, preparing a jar file, preparing a web application archive file, or a ER file. Also we can have like in some tasks we can even publish our artifacts to the artifact tree, so that we can store those artifacts into a shared location. So there are different ways in which we can have these particular tasks executed. Now build scripts is the one in which we will be storing all this information. What are the dependencies, what are the different tasks we want to refer. It's all going to be present in the build.gradle file there. Build.gradle file will be having the information related to what are the different dependencies you want to download and you want to store there. So all these things will be a part of the build scripts. Now let's talk about the features of Gradle. What are the different features which we can use in case of Gradle here? There are different type of features which is available there, so let's talk about them one by one. So the very first one over here is the high performance. Then high performance is something which we can see that we already discussed, that in case you are using a large projects, so Gradle is something which is in better approach as compared to Maven because of the high performance which we are getting. It uses an internal cache which makes sure that you are using, like you are doing the builds faster, and that can give you a higher performance over there. Second one is the support. It provides the support. So it yes definitely provides a lot of support on how you can perform the builds, and it's being the latest tool which is available there. So the support is also quite good in terms of how you want to prepare the build, how you want to download the plugins, different plugin supports, and the dependencies information also there. Next one is multi-project build software. So using this one you can have multiple projects. In case in your repository you have multiple projects here, so all of them can be easily built up with the help of this particular tool. So it supports multiple projects to be built up using the same Gradle project and Gradle scripts. So that support is also available with this Gradle build tool. Incremental builds are also something which you can do with the help of Gradle. So if you have done only the incremental changes and you want to perform only the incremental build, so that can also be possible with the help of a Gradle here. The build scans, so we can also perform the build scans. So we can use some integrations with SonarQube and all, where we can have the scans done to the source code on understand on how the build happens or how the source code really happens on there. So that code scan or the build scans can also be performed with this one. And then it's a familiarity with Java. So for Java it's something which is considered as an by default. Not even Java, in fact Android, which is also using the Java programming language, is using the particular Gradle over here, so that the build can be done and it can gain benefits out of that. So in all the manners, in all the different ways, it's basically helping us to see that how we can make sure that this tool can help us in providing a lot of features, and that can help us to make a reliable build tool for our Java based projects or any other programming based project here. Right, now let's see that how we can onboard a Java project with a Gradle here, and for that we have to go back, and Gradle is something which is already installed. We just have to create a directory where we can have like how we can perform some executions, we can prepare some build scripts, and we can have a particular execution of a Gradle build happened over there. So let's go back to the machine. Okay, so we are going to open the terminal here and we'll see that how we can create it. So first of all I have to create a directory structure. Let's say that we'll say like Gradle hyphen project. Now once the project is created, so we can go inside this directory, so to create some Gradle related projects and preparing the files. Now in this one let's first create a particular one. So we will be saying like vi build dot Gradle. So in this one we are going to put like two plugins we are going to use. So we are going to say like apply plugin Java, and then we are going to say like apply plugin application. So these two plugins we are going to use, and when we got this file over here in this one, so it shows like build.gradle, which is available there in this case. So two these files are available. Now if you want to learn like what are the different tasks. So you can run like Gradle tasks command over there. So Gradle task will help you know that what are the different tasks which is available over here by processing the build scripts and all. So this will definitely help you to understand on giving you the output. So here all the different tasks are being given, and it will help you to understand that what are the different tasks you can configure and you can work over here, just like jar files, clean and all that stuff, build, compile, then init is there, then all these different executions, assemble, then java dog, then build, then check, test, all these different tasks are there. And if you really want to run the Gradle build, so you can run like Gradle clean to perform the clean activity, because right now you are doing like if a build, so before that you can have a clean, and then you can run a specific command, or you can run the Gradle clean build, which will perform the cleanup also, and it will at the same time will have the build process also performed over there. So build and cleanup both will be executed over here, and what is the status, whether it's a success or it's a failure, that will be given back to you. Now in this case, in the previous one, if you see that when you ran the Gradle clean, it was only running one task, but when you go for the build process, when you run the clean build, it's going to give you a much more information. In fact, you can also give me further information, like you can have the hyphen info flag also there, so that if you want to get the details about the different tasks which is being executed over here, so that also you're going to get over here in this one. So you just have to put like hyphen info, and then all these steps will be given back to you, that how these tasks will be executed and the response will be there. So that's a way that how you can create a pretty much simple straightforward project in form of Gradle, which can definitely help you to run some couple of Gradle commands, and then you can understand that what are the basic commands you can run and how the configurations really works on there, right? Let's go back to the main content. Right, now let's move on to the next one. So in the next one, we are going to see that how we can prepare a Gradle build project in case of Eclipse. Now we are not using the local system. We are not directly creating the folders and the files here. We are actually using the Eclipse for performing the creating a new Gradle project over here. So let's move on that part. Okay, so now the Eclipse is open, and I have opened in this one. The very first thing is that we have to do the Gradle plugin installation so that we can create new projects on Gradle, and then we have to configure the path, that how the Gradle plugin can be configured on the preferences and all that stuff, and then we will be doing the build process. So the very first thing is that we have to go to the Eclipse marketplace. In there we have to search for Gradle. So once the search is done, it will show us the plugins related to Gradle. So we have to go for build ship Gradle integration. So we'll click on the install. It will proceed with installation. It will download it. In some cases, maybe it's part of the Eclipse as in the ID. So you can go to the installed tab and you can see that also, that if this plugin is already installed or not. But in this case, we are installing it, and once the installation is done, we just have to restart the specific once we have to restart this Eclipse so that the changes can be reflected. So it's downloading the Gradle here, and once that is installed, we will be able to use it over here in this case, in this scenario. So we have to just wait for that part. So still downloading the jar files. So once the jar file is done, it's now over the areas and downloaded. So after that, we will be able to proceed further on that download aspect. So it's going to take some time to download it, and once it's done, we will be able to proceed further. Now once the progress is done, so it's asking us for the restart now. So before that, we just have to click on restart now, and then the Eclipse will be restarted altogether again here. So you can do it manually, or you can go for that options. It just require a restart so that the new changes can be reflected over here. So the plugins can be activated and can be referenced here. Now we have to just put up like the the configuration where we can have the system. So we can go for the Gradle configuration. So we can go for Windows and then preferences. Now in this case, we have to go for the ones in which the Gradle option is available there. So Gradle is what we are going to select. Now user home, the Gradle user home is what we need to use, right? So you want to go for the Gradle, you want to go for local installation. So all these options you can use. You can, if you go for the Gradle wrapper, then it will be downloading the Gradle locally and it is going to use the Gradle W or gradlew.bat file. But if you already have an installation locally, so you can prefer that also, right? Now in the previous demo we have already got the Gradle extracted, so we just have to go for the downloads. In the downloads already Gradle is available, so we are going to select that part here. So this is what we are going to select, right? So this represents that this is the directory structure in which we are having the mechanism. So you can either go for the build scan, so you can select the build scan also. So once this is enabled, then all the projects will be scanned and will be, you know, published, and it's in kind of additional option which is available. If you really want to disable it, you can disable it also, and you can go with this configuration also. So this is where the particular Gradle folder is being put over here in this case, and then we have to just click on apply, and we just have to click on apply and close. So with this one, the particular execution is done. Now we will be going for the project creation, so you can right click over here, or you can go to the file also. So here we are going to go for the job project, and in this we are going to have a Gradle project. So Gradle project is what we are going to create here. And next, so we are going to say like Gradle project, and then next. So once that is done, so finish. So with this one, when you create the project, so what will happen that automatically there will be a folder structure will be available there, right? And there are some Gradle scripts which will also be created there. So we will be doing the modifications to there, and we'll see that how the particular Gradle build script looks like, and how we will be adding some couple of Selenium related dependencies, and we'll see that how we can have more and more dependencies added, and what will be the impact of those dependencies on the overall project. So that also, it's very important aspect to be considered. So let this processing be happen over there. It's just creating, and some plugins and binaries are getting installed and getting downloaded. So we'll see that once the project is imported, completely executed over here and got created, we can extract that. Now if you see here, the particular option is available about the Gradle tasks, so you can extract it also, and you will be able to know that what are the different tasks which is available there. Let's see that in the build they are running like build. These are the different tasks which is happening inside the build process. So Gradle executions will be also available over here in this case, and Gradle tasks will be different. It will be represented over here in this one. So you just have to extract on the Gradle build project. Okay, so this is the library which is available. Now what happens that you will be able to have like settings.gradle. In this one you will be able to have like, okay, Gradle hyphen project is something which is available there in this one, so that's what I'm being referring. Then we have over here as in these folder structures which is created like source, main, Java. This is the one. Source, test, Java is the one which is available as in the folder structure, and source, test, resources are also available here. So the main source, main, resources are also available. Now in this case, what happens that these are the dependencies, project and external, these are the different dependencies are available there. So let's see, let's add an dependency over here in this one in the build.gradle script, and see that how we can do that. If we open build.gradle file, so you can see that these dependencies are there, like test implementation, JUnit is available there, right? And then we have a implementations of this one which is available. Now these jar files when you put up, it will automatically be added up as in part of this one, as in part of the particular dependencies over here, and which means that you don't have to store them as in within the repository, and automatically they can be happened over there. So let's open a dependency page. So we will be going to MVN repository, where we will be opening a dependency link. So this is the dependency link here. So Selenium-Java is available, and it can give you the dependency for all the different options. Now we have for Maven, this is the one, and for Gradle, this is the one here. So we have to just copy this one, and we have to use it as a dependency. So this is the group, and this is the name and the version which we are using here. Now we have copied this one, so we will go back to the Eclipse. So here we have to just put that dependency, and we have to just save it. So this is something which is providing like Selenium dependencies which is available. So now we have to just refresh the project. So right click over here, then you will be able to see the options in the Gradle saying that refresh Gradle project. Now once the moment you do that, so you will be able to do, like, for the first time maybe it will take some time to download all the dependencies which is related to Selenium, but after that you will be able to see like the dependencies will be simply added up over here in this case. So you can see that all the Selenium related dependencies are added up. For any reason, if you comment these ones and you say like synchronize again, so you will see that all the dependencies which you are adding up from this Selenium from the Selenium perspective will be gone back again. So this is the way that how you can keep on adding the dependencies which is required for preparing your build for your source code, and from there you will be able to proceed further on the execution part. So that's the best part about this Gradle here. So that's a way that how we are going to prepare a Gradle project within the Eclipse, and now you can keep on adding like the source code in this one, and that's the way that how the code base will be added up over here. Right, so that's the way that how the particular executions or this Gradle project is being prepared in case of Eclipse.
Selenium installation is a three-step process, so it has certain prereqs. The first prereq is you need to have Java on your system. So we will be installing Java first, and then we will be working with Eclipse IDE. So we will be installing Eclipse, and then we will install Selenium. For Java, we will install the version Java 8. And for Eclipse, we have a version 4.10. This was the last stable version which was released in December last year. So I'll be using that version. And Selenium, we will download the latest 3.14 version. Okay, so let's get started with our first step, which is the Java installation. So to install Java, let's go to the browser and simply just search for Java 8 download. So now you will see that there is an Oracle site which is listed there, and that is where you would be downloading all your Java package. So go ahead and click on that. And for you to download any JDK package from the Oracle site, you need to create an account. So if you already have one, you just need to log in using that account, and then you can download any of the JDKs. And if you do not have one, please go ahead, create a new account on the Oracle, log into that account, and then you can just download the Java 8. So since I already have an account and I have already downloaded the package, but I'll show you how and where to download it from. So in this page, if you scroll down, so you will see this Java Development Kit 8211. So this is the version we'll be downloading it. So click on the Accept License Agreement, and then since we are working on the Windows system today, so we will be downloading this, the Windows package. So just click on that and it will get downloaded in your downloaded folder. And as I said, I've already downloaded the packages. So here it is. What I've done is I've just created a directory called installers, and I'm going to be keeping all my installables here. So here I have a folder called Java installer, and this is where my installable is. So now that we have this file, so we will just go ahead, double click on it and launch this installer. The installer is launched, and just click on run. So this will take a few minutes to install Java. The installer is launched. Now just click on the next button here. So here for the installation directory, you can change the directory to the choice of whatever drive and the folder structure you want to. I would like to leave it as default here, and we'll just go and click on next, and then the Java installation is in progress. So let's wait until this is completed. It really shouldn't take too much time, maybe just a few more minutes here. Okay, accept the license term, just click on next. We'll leave the destination folder as it is. So JDK 8 is successfully installed on your system. So close the installer now, and let's go ahead and check whether the installation is done properly. So for that, what I'll do is I'll go to my command prompt and I'll just say Java minus version. So it says Java version 1.8, and this tells us that the Java is installed successfully. Now, after this installation, there are a couple of configurations which we need to do. And what are those configurations? One is you need to set the path variable, and then we are also going to set a Java home directory. So for that, first let's go ahead and check where is the Java installed actually. Let's figure out the directory first. So if you remember, the directory structure where the Java got installed was in program files, Java. There are certain previous versions which I had installed and then uninstalled it. So that is why you see some residuals here sitting here. Let's not worry too much about that. Instead, let me go to the latest one what I have installed, which is this. Okay, and there is a bin folder here. And this is the path which we need to set in our path variable. So what I will do is I'll just copy this path and then go to your control panel. Here, go to your, where is my system? Yeah, so click on the system, go to advanced system setting, And here in the environment variables, find the path variable, okay, and then say edit. Now, what are we doing here in the path variable is we are going to add the Java bin directory to the path. Be very careful whenever you're editing your path variable. Do not overwrite anything. Always go into the edit mode, go towards the end here, and then just say Ctrl V, paste the path which you have just copied from the Explorer window. That's it. Now just say OK, done. So your path setting is done. So what's the next one we need to do? We need to add a new environment variable called the Java home. Now what I'll do for that is I'll just say new. I'll just type Java home here. And what is the value of this we need to set? We need to set the same path but without the bin directory. So we just need to set the path till your Java directory. That is this. So we'll just copy the path again and paste it here. That is all. Just say OK, click on OK, click on OK here, and we are done. So again, let's go to our command prompt and just say Java -version. So everything seems to be fine. So now successfully we have installed Java on the system. So what is our next installation step? What we have? Now we need to install the Eclipse. So let's go back to the browser again. So to download Eclipse, we will be downloading the package from the eclipse.org. So when you go here to eclipse.org, you can see the latest version which is available. And the latest version available when this video was made was 2019-06. So especially with Eclipse, since it's an open source, I prefer to work with the last stable version, and so does most of the developers too. And hence that is the reason why I have picked up the version which is like last year's version, which is 4.10, which was released in last December. So you can always choose to go with the latest version, but then if there are any issues and if you're like first time working with the Eclipse, you're going to get confused as where these issues are coming from, right? So I would still recommend that you use the last stable version which is available with your Eclipse. So now to get the last stable version, what you need to do is go and click on this download packages. And here, if you scroll down this page, you can see here more downloads. So there is a list of all the previous releases of Eclipse which is available, and this is what we need to download. So just click on that 4.10 version and then click on the OS on which you want to install Eclipse. For us it is Windows, so I'll just click here on the 64-bit Windows and then click on the download and you will be downloading the complete package. So once you download, this is what it will look like. So let's go back to our directory of installers. So this is the installer for the Eclipse which I got. Now what's the next step I need to do? Just launch this installer and install Eclipse. So I'll just say double click on this. I'll say run. So here you'll see multiple options here for Eclipse installation. So depending on your requirement, you can go ahead and install any of these packages. So for us, we just need an Eclipse ID for Java developers. So I'll select this and I'll say install. So again, you'll have a choice of directory where you want to install. So I have chosen D drive here. This is the default directory name it takes, which is okay. We can leave it as it is. And then also you have an option to create a start menu entry and desktop shortcut. So just leave the default selection as it is and go ahead and click on install. So this will take a while to install the Eclipse. This says select all. You can close this window. This says select all and accept it. Okay, so the installation has been completed successfully. So let's go and click on this launch and let's see the first window what opens. When you launch the Eclipse, you need to specify a workspace directory here. Now what is this workspace directory? So this is a directory or a folder wherein all the Java files or any programs or any artifacts which you're going to create through Eclipse will be stored in this particular folder. So this could be any location on your system. So this is, you can go ahead, browse the location and change it. So for in our case, what we will do is I'll go to the D drive and I already have a directory. So here I'll just select this folder and then create a folder called workspace. I'll say my workspace and then I'll say launch. So every time I open the Eclipse, right? So this is going to take as my default workspace and all my programs, all my Java scripts or my automation scripts are going to be stored in this particular location. So we'll say launch. So this is a welcome window which opens. We can just close this and there we go. The Eclipse is open with a certain perspective. So there are certain windows here which we do not need. Let's just close them. So now the first thing what you do after launching the Eclipse is go ahead and create a new project. So I'll say file, new, and since I'm going to be using Java with Selenium, I'll say create Java project. So give a project name. Let's say my first project. Now you have an option here to select the JRE which you want to use. So we just installed this JDK 1.8 Okay, so I'm going to click on use default JRE. Otherwise, you also have an option to use a project specific JRE. For example, I could have two different projects where one project I'm going to be working with JRE 1.8 and there is another project which I want to work with the latest Java, maybe Java 12. And I can have more than one Java installed on the machine. So this gives me an option to select whichever Java I want to work with. So if you have another Java installed here, it will show up in this list. So, and you can just go ahead and select that. Now, since we have only one Java installed on our machine, which is Java 1.8, I will say use default JRE, which is 1.8, and I will click on finish. Now, if you observe this folder structure, the project which is created, see all the reference libraries to this particular Java have been created here. Now we are ready to create any kind of Java programs in this project. So now we have successfully done the second step of our installation, which is the Eclipse installation. After this, we need to install the Selenium. So again, let's go back to the browser and see what files we need to download to install Selenium. So let me go to my browser, and here I will be going to the seleniumhq.org. So if you're working with Selenium, this particular website, the seleniumhq.org, is going to be a Bible. Everything and anything related to Selenium is available in this website. Whether you want to download the files, whether you want to refer to the documentation, anything regarding to Selenium is available here. So what we want now is the installables for Selenium. So here, go to the download tab. Now, for you to install Selenium and start working with Selenium, there are three things which are required for you to download. One is a standalone Selenium server. So this is not required immediately when you get started with Selenium. However, when you start working with remote Selenium WebDriver, you would be requiring this. When you have a grid setup, you will be requiring the standalone server. So for that, what you can do is you can just download the latest version available here. So when you click on that, it will download the file into your download folder. So this is one particular file which you need to keep. Next, Selenium client and WebDriver language bindings. Now in today's demo, we will be looking at Selenium with Java. So that means my client package of Java is what I need to download. So whatever programming language Selenium supports, we have respective downloadables available with that. Say if you're working with Python, then you need to download your client library for Python. And since we are working with Java, you need to download this package. So simply what you need to do, click on this link and it will download the Java package for you, which are basically the jar files. So we have client libraries now, and then there is another component what we need. Now with Selenium, you are going to be automating your web browser applications, correct? And you also want your applications to run on multiple browsers. So that means your scripts, the automation scripts which you create, should be able to run on any browser. Selenium works with multiple browsers like Edge, Safari, Chrome, Firefox, and other browsers. Even it has a support for headless browser. Now every browser which it supports comes with its own driver files. Now say for example, we want to say work with Firefox driver. So that means for us to start working with Firefox browser, we need to download something called as a Gecko driver here. And if you want to work with Chrome browser, you need to install the Chrome driver. So depending on what browsers you'll be testing with, go ahead, click on each of this link and download the latest driver files. Now, since we are going to be working with Firefox in this demo, what I need to do is I just need to click here on the latest link. So when I click on the latest link, it is going to take me to this driver files. So driver files are specific to each of the operating system. So if you go down here, you will see there is a separate driver file available for Linux, for Mac, and for Windows. So depending on which operating system where you'll be running your test, download that particular driver file. And this is the driver file I need because we are working on Windows machine. So these are the three different packages which we need to download from the seleniumhq.org for us to install Selenium. So let me show you the folder where I have already downloaded all this. So if you see here, Selenium Java 3.141.59. Okay, this is nothing but our client library, which we saw here. Let's go back to the main page here. That is this. So once I download this, this is a zip file. After I unzip the file, this is the folder structure I see. And let's see what is there in this folder structure. So there are two jar files here. And then in the libs, there are multiple jar files. And we will need all this to work with Selenium. And then we also downloaded the driver files. So what I did was, after downloading those driver files for the browser, I created a directory here called drivers. And I've kept all my browser drivers here. So I have a driver file downloaded for Chrome. I want to work with Firefox, so I have a Gecko driver here, and then for Internet Explorer. That's it. So this is all we need. So once we have all this, what you need to do is go to your Eclipse. In the Eclipse, right click on the project which you have created, and then go to the build path and say configure build path. Go to the libraries tab here. Now, do you see this JRE libraries here? This is what got installed first. And now similarly, we are going to add the Selenium jars to this library. And how do we add that? On your right, you can see this add external jars. Click on add external jars. Go to your folder where you have downloaded your Selenium, which is this. Select all the jar files which is available. So I have 2 jar files here. I'll just say click open. Again, I will click on add external jars. Now from the libs folder, I will select all this 5. So select all the 5 jars and click on open. So you should see all the 7 jar files here. So once you have this, just say apply and close. Now, if you look into your project directory here, you will see a folder called referenced library. And this is where you will see all the Selenium jars here. This is a very simple installation. In Eclipse, when you want to install Selenium, you just need to export all the jars of the Selenium into Eclipse. And now your system is ready to start working with Selenium scripts. Alright, so now let's just test our installation by writing a small Selenium test script. So for that, what I will do is, I'll go to the source folder, right click, new, and I'll say Java class. So let's name this as, say, first Selenium test, and I will select this public static void main and I will click on finish. Alright, so now let's create a use case. Say we want to launch a Firefox browser and then we want to launch the Amazon site. So these will be just 2 simple things which we will be doing in this test script. So for me to do that, what I usually do is I create a method for any functionality which I want to create here. So now I want to do a launch browser. So I'll create a method here called launch browser. Now, whenever you start writing your Selenium scripts, the first line what you need to do is you need to declare an object of WebDriver class. So here I'll say WebDriver driver. So now if you hover over this error, what it is showing, it says import WebDriver from org.openqa.selenium. So if you remember, when we installed the Selenium, we imported all these jars, right? So that means whenever we want to use a WebDriver, we need to import this class from these packages. So just go ahead and click on this import state. Done. Now next step. Now for us to launch a Firefox browser, it is a 2-steps process which is involved here. One is you need to set the system property and then you need to launch the driver. So let's do that. I'll say system.setProperty. So use this method set property. So this takes 2 arguments, the key and the value pair. Now what is the key I'm going to mention here? I'm going to be mentioning the Gecko driver and the path for the Gecko driver. Okay, because since I'm working with the Firefox. So in double quotes, I'll say webdriver.gecko.driver. This is my key. And the value is going to be, the fully qualified path for your driver files. And you know where we have kept our driver files. Let's go to that. Driver files in D:, I have Selenium tutorial. In installers, I have driver folder. Okay, so I'm just going to copy the complete path from here. Control C, and I paste it here. Control V. Along with this, I need to provide the file name for the Gecko driver, which is geckodriver.exe. And let's complete this step. Next. So once I've set the property, I need to provide a command for launching my Firefox driver. And how do I do that? I simply use this driver object which I've created, driver equal to new Firefox driver. Again, similarly, the way we imported packages for WebDriver, we also need to import the package for Firefox driver. So just hover the mouse over that and select import Firefox driver. With these 2 statements, we will be able to launch the Firefox browser. And as I said in our use case, what is the next thing we want to do? We want to launch, say, Amazon.in website. For that, there is a command in Selenium which says driver.get and you pass the URL here. So for me to write the URL, what I usually do is I go to my browser, I open the website which I want to work with. In our case, it's Amazon.in, and I just simply copy this fully formed URL, go to my Eclipse and just paste it here. Now this ensures that I don't make any mistakes in typing out the URL. Let's complete this statement and we are done. And now in the main function, I'll just create an object of this and we will call this method. So I'll copy this class, first Selenium test, say obj equal to new first Selenium test. And now I'll say obj dot, this is our function, launch browser. So let's save this and execute this. Control C, right click, run as Java application. Okay, so the Mozilla Firefox has been launched. Now it should launch your Amazon.in. Bingo. So there goes our first test script which ran successfully.
If getting your learning started is half the battle, what if you could do that for free? Visit SkillUp by Simplilearn. Click on the link in the description to know more.
Before you start understanding any automation tool, it's good to look back into what manual testing is all about, what are its challenges, and how automation tool overcomes these challenges. Challenges are always overcome by inventing something new. So let's see how Selenium came into existence and how did it evolve to become one of the most popular web application automation tool. Selenium suite of tools. Selenium is not a single tool. It has multiple components. So we will look into each of them. And as you know, every automation tool has its own advantages and limitations. So we will be looking at what the advantages are and the limitations of Selenium and how do we work around those limitations. Alright, so let's get started. Manual testing. A definition, if you can say, a manual testing involves the physical execution of test cases against various applications. And to do what? To detect bugs and errors in your product. It is one of the primitive methods of testing a software. This was the only method which we knew of earlier. It is execution of test cases without using any automation tools. It does not require the knowledge of a testing tool, obviously because everything is done manually. Also, you can practically test any application since you are doing a manual testing. So let's take an example. So say we have a use case. You are testing, say, a Facebook application. And in Facebook application, let's open the Facebook application and say create an account. This is your web page which is under test now. Now as a tester, what would you do? You would write multiple test cases to test each of the functionalities on this page. You will use multiple data sets to test each of these fields like the first name, the surname, mobile number or the new password. And you will also test multiple links. What are the different links on this page, like say forgotten account or create a new page. So these are the multiple links available on the web pages. Also, you look at each and every element of the web page, like your radio buttons, like your drop down list. Apart from this, you would do an accessibility testing. You would do a performance testing for this page, or say a response time after you say click on the login button. Literally, you can do any type of tests manually. Once you have these test cases ready, what do? You start executing these test cases one by one. You will find bugs, your developers are going to fix them, and you will need to rerun all these test cases one by one again until all the bugs are fixed and your application is ready to ship. Now, if one has to run test cases with hundreds of transactions or the data sets and repeat them, can you imagine the amount of effort required in that? Now that brings us to the first demerit of the manual testing. Manual testing is a very time consuming process and it is very boring. Also, it is very highly error prone. Why? Because it is done manually and human mistakes are bound to happen. Since it's a manual execution, testers' presence is required all the time. One needs to keep doing manual steps, step by step again all the time. He also has to create manual reports, group them, format them so that we get good looking reports. Also send these reports manually to all stakeholders. Then collection of logs from various machines where you have run your test, consolidating all of them, creating repositories and maintaining them. And again, since it's all is a manual process, there is a high chance of creating manual errors there. Scope of manual testing is limited. For example, let's say regression testing. Ideally, you would want to run all the test cases which you have written. But since it's a manual process, you would not have the luxury of time to execute all of them. And hence, you will pick and choose your test cases to execute. That way, you're limiting the scope of testing. Also, working with large amount of data manually is impractical, which could be the need of your application. What about performance testing? You want to collect metrics on various performance measures as a part of your performance testing. You want to simulate multiple loads on application under test, and hence manually performing these kind of tests is not feasible. And to top it all up, say if you're working in an agile model, where code is being churned out by developers, testers are building their test and they're executing them as and when the builds are available for testing. And this happens iteratively. And hence, you will need to run this test multiple times during your development cycle. And doing this manually definitely becomes very tedious and boring. And is this an effective way of doing it? Not at all. So what do? We automate it. So this tells us why we automate. 1, for faster execution. 2, to be less error prone. And 3, the main reason is to help frequent execution of our test. So there are many tools available in the market today for automation. One such tool is Selenium. Birth of Selenium. Much before Selenium, there were various tools in the market, like say RFT and QTP, just to name a few popular ones. Selenium was introduced by a gentleman called Jason Huggins way back in 2004. He was an engineer at ThoughtWorks. and he was working on a web application which needed frequent testing. He realized the inefficiency in manually testing this web application repeatedly. So what he did was he wrote a JavaScript program that automatically controlled the browser actions, and he named it as JavaScript Test Runner. Later, he made this open source, and this was renamed as the Selenium Core. And this is how Selenium came into existence. And since then, Selenium has become one of the most powerful tools for testing web applications. So how does Selenium help? So we saw all the demerits of manual testing. So we can say by automation of test cases, one, Selenium helps in speedy execution of test cases. Since manual execution is avoided, the results are more accurate, no human errors. Since your test cases are automated, human resources required to execute automated test cases is far less than manual testing. Because of that, there is a lesser investment in human resources. It saves time, and time is money. It's cost effective as Selenium is an open source. It is available free of cost. Early time to market. Since you save effort and time on manual execution, your clients will be merrier as you would be able to ship your product pretty fast. Lastly, since your test cases are automated, you can rerun them any point of time and as many times as required. So if this tool offers so many benefits, we definitely want to know more detail about what Selenium is. Selenium enables us to test web applications on all kinds of browsers like Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge, Opera, and even the headless browser. Selenium is an open source and it is platform independent. The biggest reason why people are preferring this tool is because it is free of cost, and the QTP and the RFT which we talked about are chargeable. Selenium is a set of tools and libraries to facilitate the automation of web application. As I said, it is not a single tool. It has multiple components which we'll be seeing in detail in some time. And all these tools together help us test the web application. You can run Selenium scripts on any platform. It is platform independent. Why? Because it is primarily developed in JavaScript. It's very common for manual testers not to have in-depth programming knowledge. So Selenium has this record and replay back tool called the Selenium IDE, which can be used to create a set of actions as a script, and you can replay the script back. However, this is mainly used for demo purposes only, because Selenium is such a powerful tool that you should be able to take full advantage of all its features. Selenium provides support for different programming languages like Java, Python, C#, Ruby. So you can write your test scripts in any language you like. One need not know in-depth or advanced knowledge of these languages. Also, Selenium supports different operating systems. It has support for Windows, Macs, Linux, even Ubuntu as well. So you can run your Selenium test on any platform of your choice. And hence, Selenium is the most popular and widely used automation tools for automating your web applications. Selenium set of tools. So let's go a little more deeper into Selenium. As I said, Selenium is not a single tool. It is a suite of tools. So let's look at some of the major components or the tools in Selenium and what they have to offer. So Selenium has 4 major components. 1. Selenium IDE. It's the most simplest tool in the suite of Selenium. It is integrated development environment. Earlier, Selenium IDE was available only as a Firefox plugin, and it offered a simple record and playback functionality. It is a very simple to use tool, but it's mainly used for prototyping and not used for creating automation in the real-time projects because it has its own limitations like any other record and replay tool. Selenium RC. This is nothing but Selenium Remote Control. It is used to write web application tests in different programming language. What it does, it basically interacts with the browser with the help of something called as RC server. And how it interacts is it uses a simple HTTP POST GET request for communication. This was also called as Selenium 1.0 version, but it got deprecated in Selenium 2.0 version and was completely removed in 3.0, and it was replaced by WebDriver. And we will see in detail as why this happened. Selenium WebDriver. This is the most important component in the Selenium suite. It is a programming interface to create and execute test cases. It is obviously the successor of the Selenium RC which we talked about because of certain drawbacks which RC had. So what WebDriver does is it interacts with the browsers directly, unlike RC where the RC required a server to interact with the browser. And the last component is the Selenium Grid. So Selenium Grid is used to run multiple test scripts on multiple machines at the same time. So it helps you in achieving parallel execution. Since the Selenium WebDriver you can only do sequential execution, Grid is what comes into picture where you can do your parallel execution. And why is parallel execution important? Because in real-time environment, you always have the need to run test cases in a distributed environment. And that is what Grid helps you to achieve. So all this together helps us to create robust web application test automation. And we will go in detail about each of these components. So before that, let's look at the history of Selenium version. So what did Selenium version comprised of? It had an IDE, RC and Grid. And as I said earlier, there were some disadvantages of using RC. So RC was on its path of deprecation and WebDriver was taking its birth. So if you look at Selenium 2 version, it had an earlier version of WebDriver and also the RC. So they coexisted. From 3. onwards, RC was completely removed and WebDriver took its place. There is also a 4. version around the corner and it has more features and enhancements. Some of the features which are talked about are W3C WebDriver standardization, improved IDE and improved Grid. Now let's look at each of the components in the Selenium suite. Selenium IDE is the most simplest tool in the suite of Selenium. It is nothing but an integrated development environment for creating your automation scripts. It has a record and playback functionality and is a very simple and easy to use tool. It is available as a Firefox plugin and a Chrome extension. So you can use either of this browser to record your test scripts. It's a very simple user interface using which you can create your scripts that interact with your browser. The commands created in the scripts are called Selenis commands and they can be exported to the supported programming language and hence this code can be reused. However, this is mainly used for prototyping and not used for creating automation for your real-time projects. Why? Because of its own limitation which any other record and replay tool has. So a bit history of Selenium IDE. So earlier Selenium IDE was only a Firefox extension. So we saw that IDE was available since the Selenium version 1. Selenium IDE died with the Firefox version 55. That was, IDE was stopped supporting from 55 version onwards. And this was around 2017 timeframe. However, very recently, all new brand Selenium IDE has been launched by Apply Tools. And also they have made it a cross-browser. So you can install the extension on Chrome as well as an add-on on Firefox browser. So they completely revamped this IDE code and now they have made it available on the GitHub under the Apache 2.0 license. And for the demos today, we'll be looking at the new IDE. Now with this new IDE also comes a good amount of features. Reusability of test cases, better debugger, and most importantly, it supports parallel test case execution. So they have introduced a utility called Selenium Side Runner that allows you to run your test cases on any browser. So you can create your automation using IDE, say on Chrome or Firefox, but through command prompt, using your Side Runner, you can execute these test cases on any browser, thus by achieving your cross-browser testing. Control flow statement. So initially in the previous versions of IDE, there were control flow statements available. However, one had to install a plugin to use them. But now it is made available out of box. And what are these control flow statements? These are nothing but your if-else conditions, the while loops, the switch case, and so on. It also has an improved locator functionality. That means it provides a failover mechanism for locating elements on your web page. So let's look at how this IDE looks and how do we install it and start working on that. So for that, let me take you to my browser. So say, let's go to the Firefox browser. So on this browser, I already have the IDE installed. So when you already have an IDE installed, you will see an icon here which says Selenium IDE. And how do you install this? You simply need to go to your Firefox add-ons. Here, where it says find more extension, so just type in Selenium IDE and search for this extension. So in the search results, you see this Selenium IDE, just click on that. And now since I've already installed, here it says remove. Otherwise, for you, it is going to give you an add button here. Just click on the add button. It will install this extension. Once it is installed, you should be able to see this Selenium IDE icon here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and launch this IDE. So when I click on that, it is going to show me a welcome page where it's going to give me a few options. The first option is it says record a new test case in a new project. So straight away, if you choose this option, you can start recording a test case. in which case it's going to just create a default project for you, which you can save it later. Then open an existing project. So you can open if you already have a saved project, create a new project and close. So I already have an existing project with me for the demo purpose. So I'll go ahead and open that. So I'll say open existing project, and I have created a simple script. What the script does is it logs me into the Facebook using a dummy username and password. That's all. It's a very simple script with few lines, and this is what it's going to do. So what we will simply do is we'll just run the script and see how it works. For that, I'm just going to reduce the test execution speed so that you should be able to see every step of execution here. Alright, so what I'll do now here is I'll just adjust this window and I'll just simply say run current test. Alright, so I'll just get this side by side so that you should be able to see what exactly the script is doing. Okay, so now you are able to see both the windows. Okay, so now it's going to type in your user email here. There you go. And now it will enter the password and it has clicked on the login button. So it's going to take a while to say login, and since these are the dummy IDs, you are not able to log in here and you're going to see this error window. Fine, that is what is the expected output here. Now on the ID, if you look here, after I execute the test case, every statement or every command which I have used here is color coded in green. So that means this particular step was executed successfully. And then here in the log window, it will give you a complete log of this test case, right from the first step till the end. And your end result is, it says FB login, which is my test case name, completed successfully. Let's look at few components of this ID. The first one is the menu bar. So let's go to our ID. Alright, so the menu bar is right here on the top. So here is your project name. So either you can add a new project here or rename your project. So since we already have this project, which is named as Facebook. And then on the right, you have options to create a new project, open an existing project, or save the current project. And then comes our toolbar. So using the options in this toolbar, you can control the execution of your test cases. So first one here is the recording button. So this is what you use when you start recording your script. And then on the left, you have two options here to run your test cases. The first one is run all tests. So in case you have multiple test cases written here, you can execute them one by one sequentially by using this run all test. Else, what you can do is if you just want to run your current test, this is what you would use. Then IDE has this debugger option which you can use to do a step execution. So say for example, now whenever I run the scripts, it's going to execute each and every command here sequentially. So instead, if I just select the first command and say do step execution, alright, so what it does is the moment it finishes the first command, which is opening of Facebook, right? I think which is already done here. Yeah. Alright, so once this is done, it is going to wait immediately on the second command and it says paused debugger. So from here, you can do whatever you would like to do. In case you want to change the command here, you can do that. You can pause your execution, you can resume your execution here, right? You can even completely stop your test execution, or you can just select this to run the rest of the test case. So if we say run the test case, what it is going to do is it's just going to simply go ahead and complete the test case. Now, there is another option here, which is, you see the timer there, which says test execution speed. So to execute your test cases in the speed you want. Say whenever you're developing an automation script, right, and say you want to give a demo. So you need to control the speed sometimes so that the viewer is able to exactly see all the steps which is being performed. And this gives you an option to control that complete execution, right? So do you see the grading here? So we have somewhere from fast to completely slow execution. So the previous demo which I showed was I controlled the speed and then I executed it so that we could see every command how it is being executed. Alright, so what's the next? This is called as an address bar. So whenever you enter an URL here, that is where you want to conduct your test. And another thing what it does is it keeps a history of all the URLs which you have used for running your test. Then here is where your script is recorded. So each and every instruction is displayed here in the order in which you have recorded the script. And then if you look here, you have something called as log and reference. So now log is an area where it records each and every step of your command as in when they get executed. Right? So if you see here, it says open https facebook.com and OK. So that means this command was executed successfully. And after the complete test case is done, it gives you whether the test case passed or failed. So in case there is a failure, you'll immediately see this test case is failed in red color. Also, there is something called as reference here. For example, say if I click on any of this command, the reference tab, what it is going to show me is details of this command which I have used in the script. It gives you the details of the command as well as what the arguments have been used, or how is that you need to be using this particular command. Okay, so now what we'll do is let's go ahead and write a simple script using this IDE. So with this, you'll get an idea as how do we actually record scripts in IDE. So for that, I have a use case here, a very simple use case. So what we will do is we will open Amazon.in, then we'll simply search for, say, product iPhone. And once we get that search page where all your iPhones are displayed, we will just do an assert on the title of the page. Simple. All right, so let's do that. So first thing what I need is an URL. Okay, so first let me go to my Firefox browser here and say Amazon.in. So why I'm doing this, just to simply get the right URL, absolute URL path here, and so that I don't make any mistakes while typing in the URL. Okay, so I got this. So let me close all these windows. I don't need any of this. Let's minimize this. Alright, so here what I will do, in the tests tab, I'll say add a new test and name this test as Amazon search. Done. I'll say add. Now I'll enter this URL which I just copied it from my browser. Okay, and then I'll just say start recording. So what it did was, since I've entered the URL in this address box, it just opened the Amazon.in URL. Now let's do our test case. So in my test case, what I said was I want to search for iPhone. Once I have this, I'm just going to click on my search button. So now this gives me a list of all iPhones. And then I said I want to add an assertion on the title of this page. So for me to do that, what IDE gives me an option is I have to just right click anywhere on this page and you'll see the Selenium IDE options here. So in this, I will select assert title and then I will close this browser. So that kind of completes my test case. So now take a look at all the steps which is created for me. So it says open / because I've already provided the URL here. So either you can replace it with your regular URL or you can just leave it as it is. So what I will do, since this is going to be a proper script and I might be using this to run it from my command prompt also. So I'll just replace this target with the actual URL. And then what it is doing, it is setting a window size. Then there are whatever I did on that particular URL on that website, it has recorded all the steps for me. So this is where it says type into this particular text box, which is my search box, and what did it type? iPhone. This was the value which I entered. Now there was one more feature which I told you in this new IDE, which I said it has a failover mechanism for your locating techniques. Now that is what this is. Now if you look here, this IDE is equal to tab search text box. This is nothing but that search box where we entered the text iPhone. And it has certain identification through which this IDE identifies that web element. And that has multiple options to select that particular search box. So right now what it has used is ID is equal to 2-tab search box. However, if you know the different locating techniques, you will be able to see here that it has other techniques also which it has identified, like the name and the CSS and the XPath. So how does this help in failover is, say tomorrow if Amazon.in website changes the ID of this element, right? You are not going to come and rewrite the scripts again. Instead, by using the same script, what it will do is, if this particular ID fails, if it is unable to find the element using the first locator, which is the ID, it simply moves to the next available ones and it tries to search for that element until one of these becomes true. That is what was the failure mechanism which has got added now. It's a very brilliant feature because most of our test cases break because of element location techniques. Well, let's come back to this. So then we added an assert title, right? So what is assert title here? It simply captures the title of that particular page and it checks. This is all. A very simple test case. So what we will do now is we will stop the recording and then I've also given a close browser. So right now what I will do is I'll just comment this out. Why? Because if I just run this test case, it's going to be very fast and you might not be able to catch the exact command execution what has happened. Alright, so right now I'll just disable it, so that it will just do all these test cases and it just stays there without closing the browser. So now I'll just say run the current test case. So your Amazon.in is launched. Okay, it is typed in the iPhone. It's also clicked on the search. So it is done. So now if you look here, since we are in the reference tab, it is not able to show. So let's go to the log. And now let's see the log. So it's going to be a running log. So if you notice here, the previous examples which we have run for Facebook is also in the same log. So we will have to see the log from running Amazon search because that's our test case. So if you see here, every command line, right, was executed successfully. Assert title was also done and your test case was executed successfully. So it passed. Now what we will do is on this assert title, I'll just modify this and let's say just add some text. I'll just add double S here. Now this by intentionally I'm going to fail this test case just to show you that whenever there is a test case failure, how does the IDE behaves and how do you get to know the failures. Alright. So I'll just run the test case again. So before that, let's close the previous window. Alright, done. And now here I'll also uncomment the close because anyway it's a failure which I'm going to see, which I should be able to see it in the logs. So I'll close the browser after the execution of test case. Okay, so let's simply go and run the test case. Okay, Amazon.in is launched. It should search for iPhone now. Yeah, there you go. Alright. Now it should also close the browser. Yes, it has closed the browser and it